Well, I thought we had about 7 seconds, but I just cut us off. Sorry, folks. Good evening. Kaya to everyone listening in tonight. That was Noongar music by the Deadly Yabu Band. One of my faves, one of Sandra's faves. We've seen them a few times, haven't we? They're pretty groovy band and they sing some good stuff. So
that'd be an amazing show.
I know, you need to get along to one.
I know. I think you were just over eager because of our exciting guest that we have here. To cut it off seven seconds short.
7 seconds short. Yes, the anticipation waits now. So, but we've got her in the studio. Sandra, you want to introduce our guest speaker or our deadly interviewee that we have here this evening?
Our deadly interviewee is Senator Dorinda Cox for the Australian Greens Party.
Woo! Hello, everybody. Good evening and Happy New Year. Heading rapidly towards midnight, and great to be down here in the studio with the wonderful LJ, Sandra and Marissa.
Otherwise known as Budja Dreaming.
Budja Dreaming, yeah. So we named it that because we bring everything cultural and, you know, it's talking about country on country, and a lot of our issues and things that we talk about is, you know, just educating people out there in the community about, you know, Noongar history, culture and Aboriginal people in general, hey? Mm-hmm. So we bring it.
It has been such an amazing journey of learning, being with you and being able to talk about all of these issues, and we're just so excited to actually have another very strong representative voice in the community who's committed to environmentalism, social justice issues, passionate about women's rights, has been serving on government for more than 20 years now, mother of 2. I'm sure I could go on and on. Do you guys want to add any?
No, we'll leave it with you.
Is that like LJ's read my bio?
Is that a fan? I was going to say, is that a fan or a stalker?
We can probably tell you some other stuff.
Oh, yeah, we can tell him the other stuff, but we won't. But I guess, first of all, when we do bring our mob in the studio, we always say, who's your mob? Where you from?
There you go.
We'd love to hear from the Senator. Where you from? Who's your mob?
My mob. Well, you guys are my mob. Yeah, sorry. But my family are both Noongar and Yamaji, and so my father's family from the southwest, the Great Southern, and my hometown is Kojonup, way down there, halfway between Perth and Albany. If you blink, you'll miss it heading down the hill, but it's got a great bakery, so make sure you stop there and grab a pie.
Those country towns do. They have lovely bakeries.
They do.
And Little Kojonup, that's actually a Noongar name for the township too,
That's right, a stone axe. So it's a very, very wonderful place, and you know, I grew up here on Whadjuk country my whole life, so I've been very privileged to be able to be welcomed by you know, and connected in to most of the families here in Whadjuk country. And there's always one person with their phone.
Usually Sandra.
It's always Sandra. What do you mean one person? Always her phone.
Yeah. And my mum's family are from Newark country, so in Norcia, 5 generations of the stolen generation at New Norcia Mission. Which I also buried my daughter's placentas on that country within the old cottages site there, so that my girls will always have a connection to their grandmother's country. And my grandmother and great-grandfather from Amangu country in Yamaji, so southern Yamaji is my connection to Geraldton. And then my grandfather was taken from Dalgety Downs or Dairy Creek Station in Wadjuri, Yamaji country, and he was taken to New Norcia Mission, which is where he actually met my grandmother. So my connection, my footprint sort of covers the breadth of the lower half of the state, and, you know, from Burungara right down to, you know, bordering Minang country and Prongurups and places like that where I call home. And when I'm away from Budja, it's a really hard time for me because I travel a lot with my work. And I, as LJ said, I have 2 beautiful young daughters, and which my mum helps a lot with. But it's hard just being away from country, from people, from your Morut, from your family, and just that connection that you have with what is home. So I'm very fortunate that I have lots of mob, including you fellas, who I've grown up with and have a strong connection with that keeps me grounded in community. And I think that's what it is about, you know, that you have lived experience of when you go away and, I've been first time overseas in 5 years this year, COP27, we were just talking about before we came on air. In Egypt, it was a difficult time. One, because they made me give up all my devices because of all the terrorist threats. But that added another dimension to being away from home internationally and being on a 28-hour flight away from Perth and away from my family, in between sitting weeks of Canberra and then having to focus on what was happening. But to meet so many great Indigenous peoples from all over the world was one of the best experiences I've had. And being climate warriors, talking about how we're all fighting for our country and our water and our sky and our air and our sea country, not just our land, was a really, really important conversation. And the loss and damage stuff that's happening in Africa. So this was nicknamed the African COP this year.
Oh, right.
Because of the climate impact will impact on the African nations before anywhere else in the world, including us here in the global south. So, we've got the global north to thank a lot, European countries, for what's happening, not just with the war in Ukraine, but also, the loss and damage that is happening, particularly for people who are most marginalised across the world, including our Pacific neighbours. So it's great to sit with them and yarn and hear their stories about their connection to country.
I was just going to say, was it similar? Or did they have other issues as well?
Well, they have other issues just like us, social justice issues, but I think it's compounded when it's climate. You think about people having used coconut husks, palm trees as seawalls on their islands.
Oh my gosh.
We don't have anything like that to compare it to be honest, because our climate change is and the impact of that is probably bushfire threat, floodings on the east coast. But to think that your islands are washing away, I heard the horrific story from the Torres Strait of people having to pick up remains of their old people and put them in a bucket. It's those types of stories which really ground you when you come home to go, I've got a lot to be thankful for, but I also have got a lot of work to do in the work that we have as a very privileged country to be able to help others. And so for me, the stories of resilience, of people's triumphs, I suppose, and some of the challenges that they've had, but also some of the really good wins, trying to pivot a whole industry around how do we get out of what's causing climate change in our neighbourhoods and in our backyards into transition of, renewable energy and the things that we know are going to help us, and that each one of us is responsible for our own footprint, and that there are things that we can do every single day that reduce and decarbonise, our footprint in the world. So it's just the little things that add up, but there are also the bigger things like manufacturing, like oil and gas and coal, and the way we're burning that up, and how we can do that every day. How can we, preserve more seagrass in sea country? How can we save our forests? All of the things that we're all passionate about and are passionate about fighting for. And I think when we talk about, and I'm really glad to be here to talk about Budja Dreaming, because it's a story and the songlines that connect us across the world. And those stories are very inspirational, but also, when they're passed on through our generations, help us to keep culture alive. So to watch and hear South Americans, people from the Sami people, our people here in Australia, the Pacific Islands, all sit in one room and talk about what we're all fighting for is the same thing. We're all fighting to save our country and to make sure we've got clean water, we've got clean air. We have a very interlinked or interconnected past that tells that story that is really powerful. And so I was really fortunate to be a part of that forum.
What an opportunity.
That sounds incredible.
I know.
That sounds incredible.
And in Egypt, what a place to go and be.
Yeah. I'm just curious to know, you were talking just a little bit about the lack of resources available in these really impoverished countries whose governments may not be set up to deal with some of those problems. But what about here in Australia? Is the government, what is the function of government with regards to climate change?
Yeah, so obviously there's international aid. So we provide international aid to other countries, particularly in the wake of climate crisis. So if there's something that happens, it's a natural disaster, we provide that aid to other countries. But on top of that, at this COP, what they talked about, at the last COP, which was COP 26 in Glasgow, was the development of the Global Climate Fund. And the Global Climate Fund, our Minister for Climate, Chris Bowen, co-chaired that alongside India. So, there's a very pivotal role for the Australian government to play in paying the rent, I call it, in making sure that we are contributing to developed nations or developing nations who don't have the amount of money that we have. We might talk about the debt that we have, and that we inherited from previous governments, but we are a wealthy nation and we have to think about how we can help other nations in relation to the establishment of the Global Climate Fund. What that means is a percentage of our GDP that we earn and our profit in this country, but also imposing a windfall tax on fossil fuel industries. I mean, at this COP, we saw them whining and dining governments. The fossil fuel industry are lobbyists. And so, these types of things are really important to understand when we have grassroots campaigns, like, some of your listeners might have been involved in things like Row 8, and or Gellerup, or, things that are about the, running environmental campaigns, which are so important, and you're up against industry, you're up against big money, corporate money, which does have an influence in our parliament, unfortunately. We recently passed the National Anti-Corruption Commission's establishment, but we still don't have good tax reform in relation to how do we make people who are the biggest emitters pay their rent, pay. If you're going to emit, you need to pay for it. And so it's a really important conversation in the context of the Global Climate Fund, because as I said, African nations will be the ones who are already impoverished, but also will see the most impact of climate. So we know that drought will hit African nations before it hits anywhere else in the world. We've already seen Pakistan, with floods. We've seen it here in Australia. We are now
Sri
seeing
Lanka.
Yeah. So we need to be thinking about the next 5 to 10 years of what is it that we want to see Australia contribute to on a global stage, not just here, but it's important to understand that Northern Australia will also be the first that will be impacted. We know that women, children, regional communities, First Nations people will all be the most vulnerable and most impacted from climate change. So we already have that research. We don't need to look anywhere else. What we need to do is start acting on that, and we need to start putting some resources into it.
For sure. No, that's good. Thanks for sharing around kind of the global sense of what's, happening and going on, and other people speaking up for issues and things. So we might actually take it to a song first and then come back and still continue to have a bit of a yarn if you're around.
Sounds good.
But this is one of my faves, and it's Gina Williams and Guy Gauss, Bindi Bindi. So I hope you like this one, Dorinda.
Yeah.
Kaya, and welcome back everybody this evening on our New Year's Eve special with the Budja Dreaming team, and we have a special guest in the station with us tonight, Senator Dorinda Cox, and we're just having a bit of a yarn with her, eh? We asked her where Mob was and where she was from, and that beautiful trip to Egypt. So what's next? What can we? Yeah,
What's
go
it
on.
like talking in Parliament?
It's scary sometimes. Like, I still get butterflies in my stomach. Lots of the times my speech is not written by me, and so if you see me talk, some of it's written by my staff, but there's lots of stuff I just go off the cuff for. And when I get ranty and I get shouty and people are shouting back at me, that's the scary bit. When someone's shouting back at you from across the room, you almost want to just stop talking and listen to what they have to say, but you almost have to counter that and just keep talking and keep busting through, because you've got something to say and you're against a clock. So you only have an allocated amount of time. So sometimes it's 2 minutes, sometimes it's 8 minutes, sometimes I can be on my feet for 15 minutes. Now, to hear myself talk for 15 minutes is really irritating, to hear the sound of my own voice. And when you're reading from a speech, it's hard. But when you're passionate about issues that matter to people, it's what you get in your gut that drives you to just say, if this is the only opportunity I've got to ever say this about how important this is to someone who's written to me, who's emailed me, who's rang my office, who's written to me on Facebook, who's stopped me at a meeting or in the street and said, Senator, can you talk about this issue because it's affecting my life, or I'm really worried about it, or I'm passionate about it. I get that feeling when I get on my feet. So when the President calls my name, I go, right, this is my time. And I watch the clock. I have to make sure I get every single word in to make sure that the person who I've represented, who elected me to Parliament, knows that I've listened to everything that they've said and that I'm there to represent them. I'm not there to represent me. And so that's the most important thing. But it's still nerve-wracking. And sometimes I get to sit in the President's chair, so I'm the acting Deputy President, so I'm learning how to be the President of the Senate, so I command everyone's attention.
Mm-hmm.
So I can tell people to shut up and sit down and, for things to restart or, manage the chamber, the gallery, public gallery where people come in. And that's a real frightening experience too, because you're in charge. You're in charge of politics in the whole of Australia, and everyone's watching you, so you're on camera all the time.
You're on camera tonight too,
Hi.
Senator.
That must be why you're so at ease behind the
I've got
camera.
a personal question. How do the girls feel about you being in Parliament?
The girls love it, and occasionally when I'm in Parliament, they watch it on their iPad at breakfast.
Oh, that's cute.
Because, they're inspired,
Mm-hmm.
and so we often have conversations. So Friday night's pizza night in our house when I'm at home. So I try and get home Thursday night from sitting week, and then Friday night we do pizza night. So it's Senator's table is in session, and the girls get to stand and talk about what's important to them. And they get their inspiration from watching the Senate, and they get their inspiration. Wow. So I remember in this story I'll quickly tell, it was like day 6 into the senatorship, and we were out for lunch at one of the DFOs, and I was reading my emails, and they just started sort of coming in, and Kira was sitting, my youngest daughter was sitting next to me and watching me read an email, and it was about the native dingoes being killed on mine sites. And she says to Ailish, the oldest one, Ailish, did you know that native dingoes, which is her totem, are being killed? And she said, yes, I do. I've read all about it. And Ailish says, I think I need to do something about it, Mum. What do you think I should do? And before I could say anything, Kira pipes up and says, I think you should write a petition and give it to the Senator to present in Parliament. So she knew, one, that she could write a petition to get other people to sign it and to campaign to save native dingoes, because that's her totem. Kira's totem is the ningan, so she's the echidna. And I talked to them both about, like, the people always tell me when they go into John Forrest National Park how they haven't seen ningans for a really long time, and so, it's what's happening to the habitat. And so not just native dingoes, but Ailish went home that day and she's done a 4-page petition with all of the different types of dingoes. So she can tell you every different type of dingo, and she can tell you why it's important that we save the native dingo. And so she's got this petition ready to go, and she'll give it to us when it's time for her to represent.
So I'll sign it.
And you will sign it.
I will sign it.
You will.
So
I'll get signatures for her.
That is so cute.
So our kids are learning political activism from a really young age. They've been to Parliament House.
We've been out in the protests since we were young too, hey? So it's nothing new. And
absolutely. And I think it's something that we're born into, right? Like we're born into, I want to say the struggle, but I think it's the fight that we were born into, that our old people gave to us. And it's fighting for our sovereignty, our rights and our responsibilities to care for Budja, care for each other, and make sure that we see all of those things in the future generations, and that we can pass that on to them, because they then become...
They're going to be the caretakers, aren't they, next?
Absolutely. So although the time, length of time I'm away is hard for them, we've had our first 18 months now in the job, and so we've got a few things we're planned for next year around where they'll travel to. We have a very family-friendly sitting calendar at the moment, so we have every school holidays off.
Well, that's good.
Nice.
Which means I can come home and be home. And then if I have to travel, I can take them with me, because we get, family-friendly trips that are allocated for us.
Sweet.
To make sure that we maintain that connection, which is really important. So they've been on a few already, like I said.
I was going to say, I think I saw a little video clip with the girls in Parliament, was it?
Yeah.
And you went around
Yes.
the museum or something and seen everything, was
Yeah.
it? And they
Yeah.
just loved it.
They loved it. They,
Cute.
and it's very, but it's a lot of pressure for kids who are 10 and 8, to be senators' kids, and, it's new for them too, so they don't know how people expect them to be.
Yeah.
And it's all a learning process. So we've been through a lot of that, and they still get bored when they go to political events, but they try and make their own fun, and I really encourage them to do that. So they would have been here tonight had they not been out swimming all day. But
Swimming makes you tired.
I know, we were expecting them to come in so we could ask them some questions too, but never mind. We might think about that next time and bring them in.
Well, we can do a phone interview with them next time.
I'd love that. You can get them on Zoom.
We did a phone call with one of Sandra's nieces, was it last week?
Yeah,
About
Neve.
Christmas. It was so cute. She behaved too, which was lovely, because Sandra kept saying, don't swear, don't swear, don't swear. And she did it. It was lovely.
She doesn't swear.
No, never.
Never.
Well, I was just thinking how inspiring it is, just, not just for your girls, but for women, for First Nations people, your role in the COP27 summit, for minorities all over the world. And I think change is happening. It's happening slowly, but here on this show, when we do these interviews, you see it happening, and you get to witness just another puzzle piece, another piece of the pie coming together.
Yeah. And you know what? It's for me, I'm the first Aboriginal woman to federal parliament from Western Australia, which is in itself a glass ceiling. But there are so many other women who are inspiring in the work that they do too, and what we all do collectively makes a difference, and we are all role models in our own way, in our own families, in our own communities, and my role just happens to be the one that I play in politics. And what I hope is in 2 or 3 generations of kids, we've got so many Aboriginal people in Parliament that no one ever remembers me as just the first person, so that it becomes a legacy for everyone, and that everyone can see their place there. And hopefully we work ourselves out of a job, because I want one day there for me to have no work to fight for Budja, for it just to be. And that is a dream of mine, is that I will eventually run out of things to fight for. It's probably something that, is a long time coming for us as First Nations people in this country. But we have a lot of people who are doing a lot of good work. We have a lot of change that's happening, and particularly in international forums this year. I think we've had women from the Pilbara who are fighting for the Scarborough Gas Project at Geneva. Raylene and Josie, on their own money and their own steam, just went, you know what, we're going to Geneva. And I was like, wow. So they are becoming inspired. I will have a First Nations woman working in my office helping me with some of the activist training that we're going to develop, so that we can inspire people to understand what it's like to run a campaign, what it's like to come and do media training, like hopefully we can get more people to do that. How do you write a media release to a major media outlet like Seven West? Like what do you need to have in that? How would you go about writing a campaign up so that you can get it funded, crowd-funded, all of those types of things. And what I want to do is make sure that we've got all those, it's like a toolkit where we build that for community, because grassroots movement is one of the most powerful, and we've got to give it back to the people. We can't just continue to see governments. There's a revolving door of people that come in and out of Parliament who lobby us, who make sure that it's kept in their hands, and they peddle that, and it's been done for a really long time. And it's time. Well, I think at the last election was a really inspiring time because we had more independents, we had more Greens, and we've got now things like the voice to Parliament. Like, as controversial as those sort of conversations are, they are inspiring too, because what we can finally see is there is a vision for our people at the end of that. And what we have to do is make sure that we've got all our ducks lined up and that we're going forward in a way that is beneficial for all of us, because we're all here. We all share Budja, we all understand, and the amount of allies that I have, not just in my party but in the community, people that stand beside me and say, we back you 100%, because you see a place for us in this conversation. We don't speak for First Nations people or Aboriginal people, but we stand beside you and we support you, and we want to understand and learn and be respectful in a different way, because they understand what the past has done and what history has done. So, we always have this conversation as we move towards Australia Day, whether you call it Invasion Day, Survival Day, One Day in Freo, whatever you celebrate, it's a conversation that, again, brings up a lot of emotion for people. And I think what we have to do is put it in a place where we can have a very mature, respectful conversation about it and move forward, because we've got a lot of change.
It's a bit stagnant, isn't it?
Absolutely.
It's like we get fearful every time it comes, especially us as Aboriginal people, because we know that conversation's coming, and we know that we are constantly trying to fight it each time, aren't we, with our friends or around the dinner table, around the barbecue. And I mean, I've already posted up our flyer and there's already been people, having a go at me. I'm, putting myself on a chopping board, but everyone is having a go, and I'm just like, you know what, it's each to your own. I'm going to do what I'm going to do because I'm a change maker, and I just have to put it out there. And I have got the support from the local community to run this event and have them involved. So there's not always those Aboriginal people that don't want to move forward. There's a lot that want to move forward and celebrate Australia Day. Yeah. And we used to once upon a time ago. I used to. Yeah. And then I kind of stopped because I have heard of all these atrocities and things and processing in myself, and then going, you know what, if I stay in that bucket down there all the time, I'm never going to get up and move myself. So I just thought, you know what, I've got to put it out there, got to put it up. Been stabbed in the back, but I've just got to keep moving. Got to keep moving forward.
We can't change our past, no matter what we do, where we go, or anything else. But we can change our future. We can make our future bright for our children.
That's right.
And our children's children. And that's one way of looking forward. So they don't have to bring that with them.
That's right.
They can't forget it, but they can grow and make different choices.
No one's ever going to forget it anyway. It's just how you move forward and how you grow.
But I think one of the biggest things is education, right? Like, we don't, there's lots of false mythological things about how even Australia was founded, the Captain Cook story, and, when I think back to the times when we were at school and understanding that, we have to tell the whole story. Right, you can't just tell bits of it, and I think that's where it comes from, is the truth-telling element. Like, if we're going to provide a history or an account of history, we want all sides of the story included in that, and then we want to move forward with what does that actually mean for recognition, and that's the conversation we're having about, the voice to Parliament. the conversation about treaty, because there's treaties that exist in lots of other countries. And how do we bring all of that together in essentially what is the Uluru Statement of the Heart, in building the next chapter for Australia. And as you say, what is it that we want for the future generations of Australians to understand, so that I know that's trickling into different parts of the education system. When I look at how my kids are being educated, they've got a native veggie garden at their school. They sing the national anthem in Noongar language.
Nice.
And so these things didn't happen 30 years or 40 years ago when I was at school. And that we are seeing this incremental change. What we need is to actually just bed that down and say, this should happen.
Yes.
It's compulsory now.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's mandatory. And think about, I went to trip, actually the girls came on, was the Australian War Memorial. I walked the whole place looking at war, and I didn't see one frontier war until I was on my way out, and it was on a back wall picture of the one in the East Kimberley. And, I said to Minister Matt Keogh, he's the Assistant Minister for Veterans Affairs, I said, we have to fix that. Like, if we want the National War Memorial to be reflective of how we've fought war not only overseas but here in Australia, let's have that conversation. So now they're going to put a display around frontier wars and understanding that happened here. Pinjarra, the Swan River settlement. Like, there's places where this has happened that people don't know about their own backyard.
Yeah,
and if we're going to move forward, it's how do we do that with an understanding of being respectful. And I think that taking that into the next chapter of Australia is going to be the most important part of history.
Because for us, it's always been the Western perspective, always. They've never asked us for our story. So now the stories are coming, but there's a lot of resistance of people going, is that true? And so that's where we've got to educate people to go, well, it actually did happen, and here's the story to it. And have some of our elders still continuing to share that as well. Those things around the stolen generation and sharing that, they need to heal for themselves as well. So
that's quite a predicament, though. I mean, it must be so frustrating to be silenced for so long and then asked to have an opinion on something, and then it's
another feer thing going, you're asking us now for what? Yeah. So because some of the oldies do go, what do they want to know? Straight away.
And will I be shut down? Will I be told, no, you're wrong, or that's not right, and it becomes an argument where it shouldn't be. It should be an accepted part of history.
Just accepted.
And I always say what we should be thinking about in Australia is it's like a marriage, right? Like, we've brought together people from different backgrounds. We've brought them in. They're in a relationship together. It's not going to go rosy all the time. But when things go wrong and they get derailed, you have to have a yarn, and you have to clear the air, and you have to resolve that. And then you have to move forward. You have to make some ground rules about, we won't do that again. We won't repeat that, whether it's my behaviour, your behaviour, things that we did in our relationship together, whatever. But we have to then move forward. And if we do that in a way that is mutually beneficial, that is meaningful, and that is equal in the power dynamic, we're going to have a different playing field, and I think a different way of us even looking at how we build a future together in Australia. And a lot of that is, even dual naming of places. When I think about Budja, and when I think about my children, their dad is from Ireland, having dual naming of their traditional or their native language versus the English language. It's very powerful to see that, in Aotearoa, can go to New Zealand and see that, and even calling it Aotearoa, that's their traditional name for, for their country.
And it's everywhere. I think even when you get to the airport, welcome to Aotearoa, and it's like, wow, where's ours?
It's deadly. It's visible. It's bilingual. And that's the way we should be thinking about how we move forward. Is culture is alive in language, and when we think about the spiritual aspects of Wudja and dreaming, language is a big part of that.
Oh, yeah. Well, we try and do that every Sunday and talk about words and what they mean, and even the local name for Rockingham and Mandurah, and, bringing that all to our listeners to educate them on, Noongar history and culture and the broader scene as well, hey?
100%.
All right. Well, I have got another couple of songs lined up, so I don't know. How are you feeling, Miss Senator? Do you want to still hang around and have a yarn, or are you ready to rock and roll and leave us?
No. I'm happy to stay as long as
She's staying. Oh, we might just pump this little place up and put a bit of Noiseworks. Hot Chili Woman. What do you reckon?
Let's do it.
I love that song.
G'day. I know, and I think I played that for you anyway. My People by Chris Phillips. It's a nice catchy little tune,
Isn't it?
Hey, and we all were pointing at each other. My people, my people. And we still have the Senator, Dorinda Cox, here with us this evening. It's been a pleasure yarning.
Senator Cox.
It's not weird.
I think so.
Because we know her personally, but it's not weird. But we've had quite a bit of a yarn to her this evening, haven't we? And getting our head around her role and being, West Australians' first Indigenous female senator. Yay for us.
Amazing.
But even this year, the most Aboriginal people in Parliament.
That's right.
Too. Well, 12, 13, 14 or
12,
something?
16 of us.
16.
That's awesome.
Yeah, across
Fantastic.
both houses. So it's the highest representation, but it's also the most diverse parliament. So people who from diverse backgrounds.
Yeah, they're all over the place too.
Yeah. So people that speak different languages, and it's reflective then of the community, right? And this is the way Parliament should be. We can't continue to have representation that doesn't reflect people's lived experiences in community, but also their backgrounds and understanding the cultural elements of that. So it's a really important move, I think, and this is where change is happening, I think, as LJ said before.
Yeah, for sure.
We're big on that here, celebrating and embracing all cultures, and that we have this dream of this country, whether we're an immigrant here. Obviously, the dreaming is very connected as well to Aboriginal culture specifically. So, but yeah, it is such exciting times here in Australia, in the political sphere, and we're just so happy to witness it. And yeah.
And be a part of that change
And
as
be a
well,
part of it.
So, Dorinda,
What?
Yes, Sandra.
do you have any New Year's, what is it?
Resolutions. Better self-care this year. Like, I didn't take a holiday for the whole of last year. And then I was in Parliament. I've been in Parliament since September 2021. So I haven't had a proper holiday since then, which meant that I got to the last week of Parliament and I thought, this is great, went home and said to my kids, I don't have to go back to Canberra. And then the Prime Minister rings up and says we've got an urgent energy bill. And so I had to get back on the plane and go back. And I can tell you it was the hardest time from not building in your own holiday and looking after yourself. So this year I've promised myself that as part of my New Year's resolution is that I will take better self-care.
Beautiful.
Which means I've planned a holiday in April and get away and to make sure I look after myself more, because if I don't do that, nobody else is going to, and people just expect you to keep going and going and going. And I can tell you that this job is not like any other job that I've done ever in my life, and it is what you make it. But in the time that it's just been over the break for Christmas, it's been good to not have to answer your phone, but doesn't mean I haven't done media, radio, and
we're seeing the new year out. This is your last interview.
This is my last interview. But it is about looking
and the
after
best
yourself. And I think that's the message for everyone. Get back on country, replenish, revitalise, and then be ready for a big year.
And actually, we just talked about resolutions, didn't we? And that was one of mine, was to actually slow down this year.
And focus on self-care
I
was
know.
mine. So it's all coming back full circle.
Must be for everyone, because that's what I said. Like when COVID hit, we stopped. Then we went full on, like just wiped ourselves silly. And then just this year, I just went, no, we're going to just pull back. So there'll be new changes for me as well and my team. So, yeah.
I got none.
You've got no resolution.
No, she doesn't have any.
I don't believe in them.
Of course.
She says she's just going to do it.
Okay.
You're going to do something, do it.
Yeah.
If you're not going to do it, don't do it.
It's true.
See?
So then there's no pressure. That's what you reckon. No pressure. You put pressure on yourself when you do it, eh? That's what you said. Yeah.
Because then you tell everybody your resolution, and everybody goes, oh.
They watch you like,
done
oh,
that
okay.
yet?"
Yes, true.
Oh.
Oh, no, that's only if you don't smoke.
Yeah, but
And you did it anyway. You gave it up. So very proud of you.
yes, I did.
Well done.
Yes, I did. And I didn't vape.
Oh, yeah. Popcorn lung.
See, that's the thing.
Yes.
Popcorn lung.
Not good.
That's what nobody understands. I don't like vaping.
No.
No, none
I think
of us
it's
do.
weird.
Well, you're just replacing one thing with another, and then you're going to get addicted to that, aren't you?
Well,
And it's weird. Yeah.
It's chemical based.
Yeah. So, if you're not, and you're taking a bit of time out, we are actually hosting an event on the 26th of January for Australia Day.
Yes.
And we were very lucky to get a grant as part of a partnership with IPL Radio, which is exciting. So first time for us as well. Yay. So we thought we'd go with it. We'll run with it. And we're going to have it at Frank Konecki Centre. But next door is a beautiful park, and we've got some locals coming, like Johnny Ford, Joel Davis, to come and entertain us and woo us, some kids' activities.
Yeah, I've seen
So
that.
we would love you to come down if you're around and you'd like to just chill
I'd
out.
love to.
Yeah,
And
we're
bring the
doing
girls.
Bring the kids.
Bring the kids. I'll bring the kids.
got lots of kids activities. So
Yeah, we do.
yeah,
It's
no,
gonna be fun.
do share that if you
And I think we've
Have
got,
got
an
it.
ice cream van.
Oh yes, we approached an ice cream van. So he's like, we're going to get back to you.
And we
And
had to,
we
had to
tasted
taste
the
it.
ice cream and we said, yep, we need you.
So, you know, it's a really good one. He's got jelly cups.
Yes.
Wow.
I know.
So we might
sounds
say a big good night to the Senator. But before we go, we've got our little poppers and we're just going to say
right.
Happy New Year to you, Senator Dorinda Cox.
I need a green one.
Okay.
Yay!
Happy New
Enjoy,
Year.
everybody.
Yay.
Enjoy your
everyone.
evening. And we've got a few tunes that are going to come up for the next few songs to see us through till 9. And then I think our next entertainers are here. So please stay tuned. Yay. It's Andrew's keep on popping over here. So Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New
I like the pop.
Year.
So Borda from the Butcher Dreaming team.
Border.
Borda.